Hey everyone, we are wrapping up our expert series of the week, and we're doing that with Matt Seamus. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So we're going to talk about headlines, and we're probably going to let headlines bleed into a deal that you're evaluating. But when you think about the headlines, and oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, the first half of 2020 is now officially over. We are in the second half. So when you look at that, you think the second half, what kind of headline numbers you think are real? And do you see any head fakes out there? There's just so much going on.
Well, yeah, I was just yesterday, I was just kind of getting ready for bed with my wife, and I was like, oh man, we're in Q3.
Yeah, exactly.
And she said, she goes, why the hell do I care?
Yeah. I don't care.
She's on maternity leave. She's just in a different headspace. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're in Q3, man. We are we're in the second half of the year. And I think so certainly good news that unemployment is coming down, more jobs coming back. I think that even the May jobs report was revised upward.
Correct.
If I remember correctly. So, and then the Congressional Budget Office, I think, is revising their end of year projections that they continue to look a little better and better than they did in March and April, for sure. Yes. So I think there's certainly some positive signs. I think what it feels like to me is, let me think of kind of an analogy here. Off the top of my head, it feels almost like there is a spigot that has been turned to the off position, but there's this pressurized water behind the spigot that as soon as you open it, it's ready to go. Right. People, not everyone's ready to come back to work, but people are ready to come back. Yeah. Not everyone's ready to go out to bars and restaurants and go resume their normal life, but a lot of people are. Mm-hmm. And so, it's going to continue to be this dance and walking the fine line between what is the government going to allow to remain open, because that's the thing that is preventing the economy from coming back. I think, this disease is real. Yeah. And certainly, I think we passed like 50,000 cases in the U.S. Today or yesterday.
Today, yeah, for the first time.
Yeah, so April or so. I mean, that's meaningful. That's significant. I don't know. I don't like to get too far into that particular headline, but it's significant. And there's a lot of reasons that may not be a great measurement. Maybe we're testing more. Yeah, I think we're certainly testing more. Yeah, but it's a milestone, and it's a bad milestone, and especially because people die, I think on average about 15 days or so after getting infected. Yeah. And so 50,000 new cases today, a record, likely means in 2 to 3 weeks an increase in deaths as well. Yeah. So that's kind of more, I think, what I'll be tracking. But one thing that I'm not sure about is I'm not sure there's any more certainty with regard to the future than there was a couple months ago.
Yeah, the one area that of all the stuff going on that I feel certain about, and I'm only somewhat certain, which tells you how uncertain I'm in of the rest of it, is that the flight out of metros like San Francisco and New York is real. That is something I've been pointing out for a couple of months now. Now the data is showing up, and I only think it gets worse from here. San Francisco rents are now down. It was down 9% 2 months ago, 11% last month. I think that trend continues. But that means for suburbia, right, sort of away from, I actually think single family homes at the affordable market and below, we could see double-digit price increases. I mean, as ridiculous as that sounds. And some of that's because because now 30-year rates have a 2 on it. The unemployed, generally speaking, were renters, not buyers, right? Generally speaking, and they're coming back, hospitality, retail. So, part of me thinks the second half could see another 5 to 8% value increase in single family homes, not including the jumbo and the, $1 million McMansions, but they're just not making any more affordable homes. And um, I think more and more people are going to leave San Francisco, New York, and move out. Now the question is, if you're in the city, do you go to the East Bay, right? Do you stay in California, right? Go to San Jose, go to Morgan Hill, go to Gilroy. Do you go out of California to another state? I mean, that's the big question. I think exodus from the big cities is something I feel pretty good about the second half.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, and you mentioned something I want to highlight. One of the principles that we use, especially in commercial property, is so like think about a large warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
industrial property. Is we love it when you can buy that property at a low cost per square foot,
Mm-hmm.
below replacement cost,
Yeah.
and when the tenant there is paying below market rents. And I want to tie together what you said with why this is important. Um, if you have $100,000 house and it increases by 10,000, the value increases by $10,000, that's a 10% increase.
Yep.
And that's meaningful. That's significant. If you have $1 million house that increases by $10,000, it's an insignificant number.
Right.
And so when you're playing at these kind of below median home value prices, small increases in real dollar terms of the value of a home are tremendously high
Mm-hmm.
increases in percentage terms. And similarly, it's just a concept that we think about a lot when we look at industrial properties in particular, is when a tenant is paying 35 cents a square foot, an increase to 45 cents a square foot is really significant for us.
Yeah.
But if a tenant's paying $35 a square foot, an increase to $38 a square foot is not as significant on a percentage basis. And so again, everything is valued based on, well, in the investor world is valued based on a multiple of the cash flow the property produces. And so anyway, just wanted to highlight that, like playing in that space where, you're not going to be beat on rents because you have a low cost basis. You don't need to be beat on. You don't need to be the highest rents in town.
Exactly.
I think that's a really important principle for people to think about.
Yeah. So then when I think about the second half, and I go, okay, if flight from, expensive areas, what I call unaffordable in my book, to affordable markets is good, what am I least confident about? And right now, again, as we sit here July 2nd, it has to be the reopening, right? We're already seeing at least headlines of, the Sun Belt struggling a little bit. I mean, right before I hit record, Texas issued a must-wear mask order, which just came out in the last 20 minutes or so. So it seems like, we have states still dealing with this, and we certainly hope we don't have another, New York on our hands, which really blew up, in March. So I don't feel great about the reopening right now.
Yeah.
So,
well, but I mean, one thing that we can both probably say pretty confidently is, let's wear masks, people.
Yeah.
Let's wear masks.
Certainly if you're going to go outside in a big group. Yeah. I mean, what's the big deal?
Yeah. It's just pretty clear that that's like a really low cost way of reducing, at least like if you have COVID, it prevents you from spreading,
exactly,
spreading it to other people, even if you have it unknowingly.
Yeah.
It seems to me a pretty low cost item to adopt across the board. But there are clearly a lot of people that have strong opinions about not wanting to wear masks.
Oh no, it's very clear. I said something about masks on one of my videos three days ago, so I got like 5 unsubs. I'm like, dude, I just brought it up. I mean, what? It's
okay,
a
well,
choice. I get it.
Apologies in advance.
That's fine. I mean, again, we live in a free country, and in a free country, if you're willing to pay the price for anything, right, you can do that thing, even if it's wear or not wear a mask, or commit a crime, not commit a crime. I mean, if you're willing to pay the price, there you go. So we'll see. It's interesting times, but again, it clearly, if Texas, the red of red states, again, their governor just issued must wear a mask. It happened in the last 30 minutes. I'm guessing there's some health reasons for that. So I think you're right.
Yeah.
So
what, exodus from dense urban areas.
Mhm.
It's interesting though, because what's that going to mean? Only a certain portion of the population that's mobile enough to move is going to do that.
Oh, it's going to leave San Francisco in bad shape. San Francisco leadership is going to get what they've been working towards. It's going to be lower income folks. It's going to be less amenities. I mean, just in the last year, San Francisco's the homeless problem has exploded.
Yeah.
Encampments and stuff. It's pretty bad. And I used to drive to the city all the time for work, so it's pretty bad.
And what about just to get your opinion on record? I'm pretty sure I know what it is, and I saw like in Nashville, they just announced a significant increase in taxes. Like I think it was like a 30+% increase in taxes. And apologies, I don't know the what taxes are being increased, but do you see any scenario here where, by and large, federal and state level taxes are not going up over the next few years?
Oh no, they have to go up. Not only taxes, but fees as well. Let's not forget that taxes and fees are going up.
Yeah.
And again, that is going to be a reason that I think California and New York, two of the highest tax states, when they're all included, will see less population, and they're going to lose the percent of people that can move, and they're going to get a raise by simply changing their address.
Totally. No, totally. And you're right. Like, I actually think of this more, I think the move from urban, densely urban populated places like San Francisco and New York into more suburban areas, I think that's definitely already happening and likely to continue. But I also think the move out of states like California and New York will see a similar trend. And I've already seen, there was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal last week with a large real estate company who's moving their headquarters from, I think it was Seattle or somewhere in Washington, to Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, I told you about a deal we just did in Boise, Idaho. And similarly, tons of California and Washington in particular based companies are looking to move or expand their presence in places like this. And I think, those trends accelerate here, which is good, which is a good thing if you have your pulse on those markets that are going to be taking advantage of that influx of population.
I totally agree. And I did a video just this morning talking about now's the time to figure that out, right? If you're going to be in a market that will see net increase of migration from, again, right, from East Coast, it's typically New York, DC, that kind of pocket, New Jersey. Out West, it's California and Seattle, right? If you're going to be in a state or a city that benefits from that, you can have some pretty good appreciation. Again, I invested, from 02 to 06, and I think it was 2003, it might've been 2004 and 5. Fresno, the Central Valley, saw 2 years in a row where it had 20% appreciation, right? Back-to-back years. I mean, that's compounding, man. That's some big stuff, right? So we could see stuff like that again. If you're going to be in an affordable market where migration goes up, it could be really good for your net worth. Not to mention, if you follow my model where you always conservatively finance, rents are going to go up. I actually have rents going up in Fresno right now. Not much, but I froze them 3 months ago. But houses are on fire. I can't keep, right? If you have a vacant house and it's clean, it'll get rented because of that damn backyard. So housing is on fire, man. And I think prices go up. And again, I still have that same house. $199 fully valued, sells for $220, had 3 offers. That's a 10% jump. You do that, a couple of months, a couple of units in a row, and pretty soon, Fresno's got double-digit appreciation. I really think Texas and some of these other markets could see double-digit appreciation because whatever's affordable, you usually can't build new inventory to that level. So prices just get pulled up and then you throw inflation, which we're going to have in 2 to 4 years. It's going to be a good time to be an owner, especially if you have a 2% mortgage.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the 30-year fixed, just conventional financing available for single family homes. I mean, you're right. It's going to be, you're going to look back in a handful of years and just be laughing.
Exactly. Inflation's 3%. Woohoo! Free money.
No kidding. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. So then when we think about the jobs picture, that's the other thing that I don't feel good or bad about. So again, unemployment rate goes from 16.6 to 13.3 to 11.1. That's kind of the three months in a row. But then we have 14 months in a row of weekly jobless claims over seven figures.
Mm-hmm.
So what I am afraid of is we're seeing a snapback in hospitality and retail, which clearly is showing in the numbers, right? So we're
Yeah.
partway up the V. But the big risk in all of this has been that second order derivative when tech workers start getting laid off and the bigger expensive wage jobs get let go. And I'm afraid we're entering that picture. I think one thing we'll see in the Silicon Valley or tech in the second half is layoffs because people are going to manage to an income statement and earnings per share. And unfortunately, in tech, the biggest thing you have is headcount, right? Headcount is the dial for earnings per share. So I'm nervous about where the job layoffs come in the second half. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just looking at the charts, it helps to visualize the massive spike in unemployment or a loss of jobs, however you want to look at it. But like if you look at a chart of the lot of job growth this year, you have this massive drop,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have these smaller increases over the last couple of months,
Mm-hmm.
and it's certainly trending in the right direction. It's positive news.
Mm-hmm.
But as my business partner Dan likes to say, you take the elevator down and the stairs back up.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
we're not going to get that big chunk of loss back anytime soon. That's
No.
going to take a long time to get back to that unemployment level. At least nationally, there will be places throughout the
Sure.
country that are doing extremely well. But on a national level, we're not getting there. Positive news for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But we got a lot of wood to chop.
Yeah. I think one thing that is certain is I think I'm on record if people go back and watch the videos that I didn't think we'd get below 10% before the end of the year. I'll take that off the table. I think there's a chance we get there by the end of this month. But I think we end the year somewhere in the high eights, low nines. I just, like you say, right? You take the stairs back up, but I also think there's been some just structural changes that won't come back. I mean, people will have to retrain and move and do all these other things. So that's good. I mean, that again
Yep.
is good news, right? Getting below 10%, that psychological number, that's good news. So, and then I guess the other thing, since we're both landlords, what about all this eviction moratorium and rent strike and all that stuff we see in the newspaper and media? And Elizabeth Warren wants a national, what would she call it? What did Elizabeth Warren call it? Rent freeze, right? Nobody owes rent. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that, but um, well, listen, I mean, yeah, being in California with now statewide rent control, at least in the kinds of assets that we deal in,
Mm-hmm.
presents a challenging situation. Um, but it also kind of presents an opportunity because it's new. It's
Mm-hmm.
new to the state, and so if you can navigate it, um, and you can budget for it accordingly,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to be one of a small pool of people that can do that. And if
Right.
you are one of a small group of people that can do that, that's going to present some opportunities that you can take advantage of that maybe other people won't see.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of how we're thinking about it. It hasn't, if you looked at our multifamily properties and just looked at the financials over the last several months, you wouldn't say, "Oh man, what's going on in the economy here? Like,
Okay.
what's the deal?"
Mm-hmm.
You would say that kind of looks pretty normal.
All right. Me too.
That's what we are experiencing. Um, and now I'm uncertain about what's going to happen at the end of July when these enhanced unemployment benefits, at least at the federal level, expire.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly talk of extending them, and I would not be surprised if they get extended.
Mm-hmm.
But if it makes sense to me that tenants today are still able to pay their rent by and large.
Yeah.
You know, if you got laid off, unemployment benefits are bountiful,
Yeah.
you
They're
know?
about 50K a year. I mean, gross. Yep.
So yeah, so it kind of makes sense to me that rents are still being paid. I am a little bit worried about what happens in August if enhanced unemployment benefits are not extended. And I also think there's there the longer, you know, the longer enhanced unemployment benefits are extended,
Mm-hmm.
the more there is a disincentive for unemployed people to go back to work.
Sure.
Why would I go back to work and expose myself to COVID potentially when I can stay home, stay safe, be with my family,
Mm-hmm.
and still earn a reasonable
Yeah. Still pay the
living?
bills. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's some really interesting incentives out there right now that are going to need to change. I think Idaho actually statewide um, just announced they were offering some incentive for people to come back to work.
Yeah. The back to
Basically,
work bonus, an $1,800 back to work bonus. Yeah.
okay, is that it? Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of interesting. And I
Yeah.
think you need to appeal to people's incentives. That's what makes people move. So yeah, that'll be something to watch. Um, we have an 8-unit multifamily project in contract
Mm-hmm.
right now in Santa Barbara that we're navigating a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a timely discussion because we're thinking a lot about the long-term effects economically there of COVID. We're thinking about the effects of the what's going to happen in November with the election.
Yeah.
We're thinking about statewide rent control, and then layered on top of that, the Santa Barbara's rent control program.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of this is what you just asked me is in my mind. It's topical.
Yeah. So for folks that don't know, and again, I don't know Santa Barbara, but I can speak to the California rent control. One of the wrinkles in that is if it's multifamily, you're subject to it. If you are doing single family homes in your name, not an LLC, doesn't impact you, right? But because this is an 8-unit, it is multifamily, you have rent control. And one of the requirements is if you're going to evict people, right, or you're going to ask them to move 60-day notice or 90 days, I forget what it is now, you could potentially be on the hook to pay for their moving expenses up to 1 full month, correct?
Yes. Yeah. In short, you have to pay. There's a few different ways you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
The most straightforward is, let's say, like in this scenario, we're buying this 8-unit property, and it's old. You know, it's tired. It needs to be completely redone, and as a
Yep.
result, rents are about 35% below where they should be.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
The owner is in his 80s. He's been managing the property for occupancy and not for rent. So you have some tenants that have lived there since the 90s. Like,
wow.
literally, people have been there for 30 years.
Jeez.
So what you need to do in order to get the tenants out of the property is you need to have building permits approved that show what you're going to do to improve the property. You need to substantially improve the property through a renovation.
Okay.
So you may pull permits for things like windows or electrical or plumbing upgrades. And there's some gray area here that the city has to, you need to understand how the city interprets the state law and how how strict the city is. Santa Barbara is particularly strict here. So, but yes, you essentially have to pay for the tenant's relocation. There are certain other characteristics that a tenant might have that make you have to pay more. So if they're disadvantaged in some way, like above a certain age, I can't remember if it's 60 or 65, they require higher compensation to move.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They have a disability, they require higher compensation to move. And there's a couple other things like that. So it's a tangle. It's a legal tangle. You really need to understand the law. And one of the tricky things is it's a tough place to be going through doing something for the very first time that the city is interpreting the state's the state's ordinance or the state's law for the first time, because it takes long, things take longer, and you're at risk for what the city is going to interpret.
Right.
So you don't typically want to be the very first person to go do a big project that the city has to interpret, the legal kind of landscape for. But that's where we are. Statewide rent control was just passed in January. So,
well, let's be clear. I don't like the word passed. It wasn't passed. It was signed. We voted no. We did not pass it. It was signed by executive order.
All right, fair enough.
That's the thing that makes me hate Gavin Newsom. Just that's like a third rail. You asked us to vote, we voted no, and you signed it anyway. That pisses me off. Sorry.
I love getting you fired up. So you have to navigate all these things, and many buyers look at that and say, man, that seems like a headache. It seems like a lot of risk. It seems like I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. How am I going to pull that off? And man, I just can't make it work.
Right.
So that's therein, I think, lies the opportunity, right? If you actually can get it right and you're confident in your approach and your business plan, you do have opportunity, because we're going to go buy this property at $280,000 a unit, but these things trade at closer to $400 a unit when they're new.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. I'm wondering, and actually I said this right when Gavin Newsom issued that executive order creating rent control for California, is the only thing he did is he hurt owners of value add multifamily that have owned it for 30 years that are older.
Huge.
That's all he did, is he hurt them. You didn't hurt me. Right. My stuff has already been upgraded. It was already at market rent. I never raise rents by 8%. So it doesn't impact me. But if I owned an 8 unit or an 18 unit or an 80 unit that was tired, to use your words, you just took away value, because in December you could sell on hope, right? You could sell on hope. Now you're throwing all these legal entanglements and risk and time and extra expense. And you're like, dude, the value's less, right? What do you think it trades for last year versus this year? If it was 280 now, what's it last year? 320?
I don't know the answer, but you're totally right in principle. Because you have to, in order to execute the business plan we want to execute, all tenants must go.
Yeah.
They can't stick around.
Yeah, you're gonna upgrade everything. Yep.
So, and with the California rent control statewide, you can only increase rents annually by a very small percentage. I think it's 5% plus
inflation.
CPI. So this year, I think it's 6%.
Okay.
Which is, if you're 35% below market, 6%,
you'll never get
you there. It doesn't matter how many years you have.
No, it's not going to happen.
So, and then, layer on top of that, you're buying these properties at maybe a 3 cap.
Yeah.
So they just don't work unless you have an extremely long-term plan, or you can navigate the legal challenges. And so this is a reason why a lot of people don't like to invest in California.
Even less. I've already heard it. A lot of people that were looking at value add properties last year just wrote California off.
Yeah,
for that exact reason.
So back to your point just a moment ago, the person who's owned this property for 30, 40 years, they just got a haircut on their valuation based on what happened in January.
Yeah. And the buyer pool is less, and your negotiating power is less, and it's just not good for the owner.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So now, interesting wrinkle on this particular deal is there is an environmental issue.
Oh,
that typically it's certainly a red flag. It's always a red flag.
Yeah, I would think so.
It's not always a deal breaker.
Oh,
but it's certainly a red flag. So in this case, there was a dry cleaner nearby that's no longer in business, but the chemicals seep into the ground, they get into the groundwater, and then they flow whatever direction the groundwater is flowing.
Huh. Okay.
So in this case, they flow directly towards our property and essentially contaminate the entire neighborhood.
Oh, geez.
Now, almost no one that lives there in the neighborhood probably even knows about it.
Hmm.
And so, you actually likely certainly have environmental issues like this all over the country that we don't even really know about or acknowledge.
Sure.
But once they are known, they can require remediation,
For sure.
um, and that can be very costly. And so the interesting thing is, in this particular case, the environmental issue potentially is valuable for us as a buyer if we can.
Okay. Really? I want to hear you tell me that
Okay.
one.
Okay. So if we can get a handle on what the environmental issue is and quantify the time and money required to remediate it.
Okay.
Okay. So if those things are true, and you can get a reduction in purchase price to account for those,
Okay.
what an environmental problem would mandate is that we actually have to vacate the building to resolve the environmental issue.
I see.
So because there are things that there's several different ways depending on the issue and the elevated levels of whatever toxins there are
Interesting.
different remediation techniques.
Okay.
And so now there's risk associated with this. This is not something that you want to go play around with. But again, what are we? We're problem solvers, right?
Right. Yeah.
What you can do is go find a big, nasty problem to solve. And anytime you can do that, I don't care what industry you're in, there's profit to be made.
For sure.
And so that's that's the approach that we're taking here.
Interesting.
And we'll see. I'll keep you updated.
How big a plot of land is this unit? It's like only half acre or
Not
something, right?
small. Yeah, quarter. It's like a quarter acre.
Yeah. So even on a quarter acre, I guess the dry cleaner must have been right in the path or something. Because again, you've got to have a whole neighborhood behind you. Wouldn't that affect everybody? Why is it just
It
your?
is. It does affect everybody, but
Okay.
It affects the whole neighborhood.
Got it.
But what they do is they go do soil samples, they do
For sure.
groundwater samples, and then they do in-unit air samples.
Okay.
Amongst other things. There's all sorts of different testing that can be required. But the other thing is an environmental issue complicates the matter for a lender,
Of
as you would
course.
expect.
Yeah.
So
I see owner financing in your future. It's what I see.
well, and you asked me about this project, and you said, hey, why don't you ask this guy if he wants to finance it? And in this situation, it would, even with notwithstanding all the things we said about owning real estate in California right now, and the fact that this gentleman is getting a haircut on his valuation, he still has the leverage. He's got a quality property. It's in a great location.
Yeah.
It's got upside. There's buyers in Santa Barbara that want this thing.
Okay.
And so I guess if we would have asked for seller financing right up front,
Yeah. Never
it would have been an easy, like, no, these guys can't get financing. We'll just move on.
Next. Yeah.
But now, so what our approach is let's uncover the dirt.
Yep.
Let's make sure we know what we have. And then let's put a pitch together that maybe it's possible that seller financing is the only viable way to do the deal at the end of the day.
If the environmental is bad enough and lenders just say no, which today they're looking for any reason to say no.
Yeah. So I think we are, that conversation is in our future, but we strategically have not.
You want all the, you're already at the table. It's your turn to bet. You're just going to wait till you have all the data before you play your hand.
And as we uncover more information about the property that is, stuff that we didn't know about, and the stuff the seller didn't inform us about or didn't know about, the leverage moves towards us.
Oh, of course.
And so once you have more, once you have greater leverage, then the opportunity to ask for something like that just becomes more. The timing becomes right.
I've never done an environmental issue like that. I mean, are we talking? I mean, you have even a scale of what it could be, 50 to 100 grand, or you have any idea?
It could be as simple. So we killed a deal last year because of an environmental issue.
Okay.
And so we've gone through this before in the sense of at least diagnosing.
Okay.
It's very hard to know. It's very hard to know with any certainty how much it's going to cost in advance. The hope is that you can, the levels are sufficiently low that you can literally put some kind of barrier between the ground and the units.
Okay.
And sometimes it's like almost like an epoxy layer above the foundation.
Okay.
That is sufficient. And then you can get basically a letter stating the remediation and clearing your liability, which of course is valuable, certainly for you, and then for resale value. So we don't know yet. We don't know how much it's going to cost yet.
Okay. But it could be six figures.
Could be. I think in this case, it's probably more on the order of, $50,000-$60,000.
Okay. All right. So again, that's $6,000 a unit, roughly, right?
Yeah,
8 units.
I think that's very, very reasonable guesstimate.
Yeah, it's just a complete. I just never dealt with, so I didn't know. Okay. All right. So still playing with the deal. Rent control in California kind of makes it. Again, I think you're right. The person who can solve the problem, to steal your words, and do it repeatedly, they're going to find value in California, because I think multifamily value add in California has never been less valuable, if that makes sense, right? With rent control, falling rates, or or you having more vacancies, more turnover, the move to the suburbs. So sounds like you have an exciting month ahead of you. You got 30 days still in inspections, or how much time?
Yeah, we'll get our inspections back next week. We'll start to put together a budget for what we found and what we need to go, what it's going to cost us to resolve. And then I think it'll be time to go have the conversation with probably the following week will be time to go have the conversation with the seller and say, here's what we found.
Yeah.
Here's what we expect it to cost. There's a gap between where we are on our contract price and what this is going to cost.
Right.
How do we want to resolve it?
Very
cool. I think we're a couple of weeks away from knowing whether we're going to proceed or not.
Very, very cool. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up this week and head into the 4th of July weekend?
No, I think I'm excited to go relax for a weekend with the family. We're not going to do anything, but
just unplug, right? Just decompress a little.
Yeah, although it will be a little bit. I mean, this summer is just going to be, like the whole year, just going to be so odd. None of your normal.
No fireworks.
No, none of your normal rituals. But we'll make the best of it. We'll have a good time. Are you going to stay local this weekend?
Oh yeah. We're not doing anything. My wife's in the high risk category, so we're not. I think we've been outside like 5 times in the last 100 days, or she's been outside 5 times. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, you guys stay safe and healthy, and I will talk to you next week.
You got it, brother. Take care of yourself and good luck.